My name is Talise Camden, and until 3 months ago, I believed I had finally found the kind of work that made my life mean something. I'm 31. I live in an old apartment on Clement Street, the kind where the windows shiver whenever the fog rolls in from the Pacific. My life wasn't glamorous, but it felt purposeful, especially because of my work at Gen Bridge, a biotech education nonprofit tucked between a vegan cafe and a co-working space in the Mission District. Gen Bridge wasn't just a job, it was my oxygen. We built programs for low-income students who wanted to break into biotech, kids who lived in neighborhoods where opportunity felt like a rumor. My job was to track their progress, write grant proposals, and keep our data clean and honest. Numbers mattered. Accuracy mattered. Integrity mattered. I used to think integrity was something everyone valued. I was wrong. The colleague I should have seen coming. Her name was Marin Vale, another program coordinator, my age, sharp enough to cut glass. She walked like she owned every hallway she stepped into. People thought she was charming. I thought she was strategic. The kind of person who complimented you while her eyes scanned the room for someone more useful. For months, she'd been eyeing the Westward Horizons grant, a $1.2 million award that would fund our program for the next 2 years. I was the lead on the proposal. She was supposed to help. Talise, she told me one afternoon, leaning against my cubicle wall like a model posing for a pharmaceutical ad. You're triple-checking the student metrics again? You know they only care about the overall trend line. I'd shrugged. They'll care when they see how real our numbers are. These kids deserve that. She gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I should have felt something then. A warning, a shift in the air, but I didn't. The morning everything went wrong. The results came in on a fog-thick Tuesday. My director, Jonah Reeve, called me into his office. He wasn't a dramatic man, but that morning, he looked like someone had smashed his laptop with a hammer. Talise, sit. I sat. Jonah rubbed his temples. The Westward Horizons Board reviewed our data. They said the student completion rates were alarming, dramatically lower than what you reported in the initial letter of intent. My throat tightened. What? That's impossible. I checked everything. He turned his monitor toward me. There it was. My spreadsheet, but butchered. Completion rates cut in half, attendance numbers slashed, assessment scores rearranged into chaos. I stared at the screen, numb. These aren't my files. Jonah's voice softened. The timestamps show you updated them the night before the submission. No, I whispered. I wasn't even home that night. I was at the community lab until 10. Jonah, I didn't do this. He leaned back. We didn't get the grant, and the board thinks we misrepresented data. They want an internal review. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. A year's worth of work, the students' dreams, my reputation, all shredded in seconds. When I walked out of Jonah's office, the entire building felt wrong. Air too thin, lights too bright, like the world had tilted sideways without warning. Marin passed me in the hallway. She gave me a little frown. Rough meeting? She said, pretending sympathy. I couldn't even answer. My mouth wouldn't move. But her eyes, those eyes sparked. She knew. Somewhere deep in my gut, something twisted and flipped. A cold realization, sharp as a blade sliding against the inside of my ribs. She did this. Internal review, the slow suffocation. Over the next week, I lived inside a nightmare. Auditors combed through my work. Coworkers whispered behind glass doors. Emails turned cold. Slack messages turned silent. I kept replaying Marin's expression in the hallway, that tiny smirk hiding behind a mask of concern. One night, around 2 a.m., I sat alone at my kitchen table with my laptop open, the glow painting my hands blue. I scrolled through the corrupted spreadsheets again and again. Something didn't make sense. The formatting changes weren't random. They were too polished. The formulas were rewritten in a way I'd seen before, a way Marin coded. I froze. My chest tightened. My breath stuttered. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. Could she really have? Yes. Yes, she could. And she did. Suddenly, anger sliced through the fog, drowning me. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was slow, steady, and terrifyingly clear, like a temperature rising degree by degree. I whispered into the dark kitchen. She set me up. The refrigerator hummed in response. And for the first time in a week, I stopped feeling helpless. The first thread I pull, it started with a file name, something in the audit log, an abbreviation Marin always used. A tiny letter combination she left in the metadata, maybe thinking no one would ever look that closely. My pulse pounded as I traced another timestamp, then another, then a duplicate file nested inside a hidden folder. Every breadcrumb pointed in one direction, her direction. And I realized something then. Something that made a cold, electric thrill crawl up my spine. If she made one mistake, she probably made more. I clicked open a folder Jonah hadn't seen yet. Inside it was a spreadsheet titled Student Progress Final.xlsx, and below it, Student Progress Real XLSX. My breath caught. Real? Handshaking, I opened the file. And right there, all the legitimate data, clean, accurate. The numbers I remembered. The numbers I'd verified 100 times. She'd kept the original, hidden it, buried it under layers of renamed files. Why keep it? Unless she needed a backup to restore later. Unless she planned this in stages. Unless... A sound echoed outside my apartment, a car door slamming. I stiffened. Someone was outside. I moved toward the window slowly. Down on the street, under the street lamp's hazy glow, a figure stood by a black sedan, staring up at my window. My stomach dropped. Was it her? I couldn't tell. The fog blurred everything. But the figure didn't move, didn't turn away, just watched. Then, my phone buzzed. A message, an unknown number. Late night working again, Talise? You should get some rest. My blood ran cold. The figure stepped into the sedan. The engine rumbled. The car pulled away. I stood frozen, heart hammering, the phone trembling in my hand. And in that moment, one truth crystallized inside me. This was no longer just sabotage. It was a game, and she thought she was winning. But she didn't know what I had found. She didn't know what I was about to do next. And she definitely didn't know who she had just underestimated. Because I was done being the victim. I backed up from the window, shut my laptop, and whispered to myself, tomorrow, everything changes. But I had no idea what tomorrow would unleash. Not yet. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm even buzzed. My apartment felt unusually still, like the fog outside had crept inside and wrapped itself around the walls. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure under the street lamp, staring up at my window like a hunter waiting for movement. But morning light had a way of sharpening things. And today, everything needed to be sharp. I made a pot of coffee, burnt, too bitter, exactly what I needed, and opened my laptop. The file was still there. Student progress, real.xlsx. The proof, the weapon, the truth. I stared at it like it was a doorway. Okay, I whispered to myself. No more fear. But fear wasn't the real enemy. Ignorance was. Being blindsided was. Being silent was. And Marin was counting on all three. Not today. The first move. Quiet, precise, invisible. I needed to confirm that Marin had accessed the system using my login. If she did, she must have left digital fingerprints. Something small, something fast, something she assumed would get lost in the sea of logs. People like her always assumed they were smarter than the system. I scrolled into the backend audit dashboard, restricted access, but as data coordinator, I still had partial visibility. At first, nothing looked odd. Then, a ping of recognition, a device ID I didn't recognize, a remote login session, 3 hours after I left the community lab that night. IP address, Bayview District. Marin lived in Bayview. My pulse kicked. I clicked deeper, following the breadcrumb trail. The session opened my data folder, then the student metrics file, then the macros tab, exactly where she manipulated the formulas. My breathing turned shallow. There it was. Her digital signature. Her mistake. I exhaled a shaky laugh. Got you. But catching her wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed something indisputable. Something that would shut her down before she could twist the narrative, before she could paint me as the paranoid employee digging for excuses. She'd weaponize confusion. She'd weaponize charm. She'd weaponize the board's ignorance. So I had to be surgical. And fast. Back to the office, the tension shifts. When I walked into Genbridge, the air felt different. People weren't whispering anymore. They were watching. Every step I took felt like a sound in a silent church. Jonah's door was slightly open. Marin's laughter drifted out. Laughter, bright, soft, calculated. I kept walking before I did something reckless. At my desk, I opened my laptop and plugged into the secure network. I needed Jonah to see the data trail himself, but not yet. If I approached him too early, Marin would sense the shift and cover her tracks. I began building a mirrored backup of every relevant log, every timestamp, every unedited file. I organized them into a chronological narrative folder labeled, "For internal review, Camden." Just the existence of the folder felt like armor. 10 minutes later, I sensed someone behind me. Marin. She leaned on the cubicle wall again, wearing that curated expression of concern. "You doing okay?" she asked. Her voice was honey. Artificial honey. I didn't look up. "Fine." She clicked her tongue softly. "Jonah's under pressure, you know. Losing that grant was rough on everyone, especially you." I shut my laptop slowly. "Marine," I said, calm as ice. "Did you need something?" She tilted her head. "Just checking in. I know how hard you take things." There it was. The subtle insult disguised as empathy. The gaslighting appetizer. My fingers curled, but my face stayed neutral. "Thanks. I'll keep that in mind." Her smile froze a second too long before she walked away. Something in her gait changed. Barely noticeable unless you were watching closely. She sensed something. Good. The unexpected ally. At lunch, I sat alone at a small metal table on the back patio, staring at my notes. I didn't notice someone approaching until a shadow fell across the table. It was Lena Ortiz, our lab instructor. Quiet, blunt, ridiculously observant. She sat without asking. "You look like you're planning an assassination." I blinked. "Not exactly." She raised a brow. "So just revenge?" My chest tightened. "Why would you say that?" "Because," Lena said, peeling an orange with surgical precision. "Marin's been too cheerful today, which means she thinks you're losing." I stared at her. She continued. "And when people like Marin think they're winning, they forget they're being watched." My pulse flickered. "Are you saying you noticed something?" "I'm saying," she said, placing a slice of orange on my napkin, "that on the night the files were altered, Marin was in the building." My breath caught. "What?" Lena nodded. "I stayed late prepping equipment for the Saturday workshop. She came in after hours. Didn't say hello. Didn't log on to the lab security board like we're supposed to. Did she go to the offices? Yes. And she looked, guilty isn't the right word, focused, like someone defusing a bomb." A tremor passed through me. This was it. A real witness. Someone objective. Someone with credibility. "Lena," I whispered, "would you be willing to tell Jonah that?" She shrugged. "If he asks?" "But he won't ask unless someone nudges him," I said quietly. Lena gave me a long look. "You're going to war with her, aren't you?" I swallowed. "She went to war with me first." A small smile curved her mouth, the closest thing she ever had to approval. "Then make sure you win." The second breadcrumb. Late that afternoon, I returned to the audit logs, this time hunting specifically for off-hours access patterns. I found them. 4 unauthorized entries over the past month, all linked to the same device ID, all during nights I wasn't in the building. And each time the system showed 2 versions of the files created, one edited, one untouched. She wasn't sloppy, she was rehearsing, perfecting the sabotage. That meant she'd been planning this long before the grant was submitted. My stomach twisted in disgust. I downloaded all 4 logs and added them to my evidence folder. I was building a case strong enough to withstand a hurricane. Then, at 5:17 p.m., a new notification popped up on my screen. Access attempt blocked. Unauthorized device detected. My blood iced. She was trying to overwrite something. Right now. At this very moment. I stood so fast my chair slammed into the cubicle wall. If she erased the logs, if she deleted the real file, if she wiped the trail, everything I'd collected could vanish. I grabbed my laptop, sprinted toward the server room at the end of the hallway, only to stop dead. Because when I turned the corner, Marin was already there, standing in front of the server room door, holding her phone, looking nervous for the first time. She looked up, saw me, and froze. "Talise," she said, voice thin, "what are you doing back here?" For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then, her phone screen lit up. I saw the reflection. An open admin panel. She was trying to wipe everything. She opened her mouth to speak, but I beat her to it. "Step away from the server, Marin." My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. She blinked. Fear flashed. Then anger. Then something else. Something I didn't understand yet. Slowly, she took one step back. But she didn't look defeated. She looked amused. And that terrified me more than anything she'd done so far. I barely slept after confronting Marin outside the server room. Her expression, fear, then anger, then that strange flicker of amusement, looped in my head until sunrise. I kept seeing the glow of her phone screen reflecting the admin panel, the way she froze, the way she smirked, as if she'd already calculated 10 moves ahead. By morning, the shock had burned away. What remained was clarity, and rage sharpened into purpose. The day after, a tightening noose. Genbridge felt colder the next day. People walked faster. Doors stayed closed longer. Conversations stopped when I passed. I wasn't paranoid. Something in the air had shifted. The internal audit report must have circulated. And even though the report hadn't named me at fault yet, the implication hung over everything. Marin walked into the office 10 minutes after me. Hair perfect, smile practiced, calm in a way that felt engineered. She dropped her tote bag on her desk, looked at me, and gave a small nod, as if we had shared a pleasant interaction the night before, instead of a confrontation in front of a restricted server room. I didn't nod back. If she wanted to pretend nothing happened, she could play that game alone. The first meeting, a stage she controlled. At 11 a.m., Jonah called a team meeting. He spoke about program updates, student successes, upcoming workshops. But his voice carried an undercurrent of strain. Then he said it. "We're resubmitting data summaries to the board in 2 weeks. I'll need both Marin and Talise to collaborate closely on the revisions." Collaborate closely. It wasn't a request. It was a trap. Marin turned to me with a soft smile, one full of faux reassurance, and I felt my jaw tighten. "Of course," she said. "Talise and I make a great team." A quiet laugh passed through the room. I didn't move, didn't blink. "We'll get it done," I said, voice flat. Jonah gave a relieved nod, but no one else saw the truth. We weren't collaborating. We were circling each other, waiting for the first wrong move. Lunch alone, a moment of stillness before the storm. I took my lunch outside again, partly because I needed air, partly because I needed distance. The fog was clearing for once, opening pockets of soft sunlight on the concrete tables. As I ate, I kept replaying the evidence I'd collected. The hidden reel spreadsheet. The device ID from Bayview. The timestamp logs. Marin's unauthorized admin attempt. It was enough to raise suspicion, but not enough to survive the political fallout if she struck first. I needed airtight proof. Evidence strong enough that not even she, or the board, could twist it. While I pieced a strategy together, my phone buzzed. A message from Lena. "We need to talk, privately." My heart kicked up. I typed, "Where?" "Storage room C, 10 minutes. Lena's revelation. The storage room was dim, filled with lab kits and boxes of student gear. Lena stood with her arms crossed, a manila folder tucked under her elbow. She shut the door behind me. Then she said, "What did Marin do to you?" I blinked. "Why would you think she did anything?" "Because," Lena said, pulling out a sheet of paper. She cornered me this morning. Asked if I'd seen you working late the night before the grant submission. My stomach dropped. Did you tell her anything? I told her I wasn't keeping track of anyone's hours, Lena replied, but the way she asked, she wasn't curious. She was fishing. I pressed a hand to my forehead. She's building a counterstory. She's building a case, Lena corrected. She's preparing to say you altered the files yourself. A cold dizziness washed over me. Lena handed me the folder. I printed this before Marin could get to it. Inside was a log of building access entries, time-stamped, undeniable. And there, 9:47 p.m., night of the altered files. Marin Vale. Main office door accessed. My breath stuttered. This is huge. She was in the building when she shouldn't have been, Lena said. You were at the community lab, and if she tries to say she wasn't here, her eyes hardened. Now you have proof. My throat tightened. Why are you helping me? Lena shrugged. Kids here trust you. You fight for them. I don't like seeing people like Marin try to erase people like you. For a moment I couldn't speak. Thank you, I finally whispered. Just end this before she ends you, Lena said. And be careful, she's desperate. The digital trail. A pattern emerges. Back at my desk, I cross-referenced the building access logs with system activity. A pattern snapped into place. Every off-hours building entry by Marin matched. A file duplication, followed by a file corruption, followed by a deletion trail disguised as cleanup tasks. This wasn't a single sabotage attempt. It was a routine, a rehearsed one. She'd been revising and perfecting the attack for weeks. The realization left a metallic taste in my mouth. She had never planned to apply for the grant with me. She had planned to replace me. The internal review notice. At 4:22 p.m., an email hit my inbox. Subject: Internal review, follow-up interview. My stomach dropped. The body of the email read, we need to clarify inconsistencies between your reported data and the submission files. Please prepare all personal notes, logs, and records related to the Westward Horizons grant. I stared at the screen. Prepare all records, meaning they suspected me, meaning she was getting ahead of me, meaning she was winning. Not yet. Not if I moved faster. The first real leak. At 6:10 p.m., as people were packing up, my Slack pinged with a message from an anonymous user. She's going to overwrite more logs tonight. My pulse spiked. Another message. If she succeeds, your evidence disappears. I typed, who is this? No response. Another ping. If you want to save your job, get to the server before she does. I stared at the screen. My hands were sweating. Someone inside the organization knew what was happening. Someone who didn't want me to fail. Someone who didn't trust Marin either. I didn't have time to question their identity. I grabbed my laptop, shoved it into my bag, and bolted for the hallway. The server room, confrontation number 2. The building emptied fast. The lights dimmed. My footsteps echoed down the corridor as I neared the server room. When I turned the corner, Marin was already there. Her hand on the access panel, her phone in the other. Her expression focused, predatory, like a wolf circling a wounded deer. She looked up exactly as she punched in the override code. Her voice was calm, too calm. Talise, working late again? I stepped forward slowly. Move away from the door. She smiled. Small, icy. Or what? You'll accuse me of doing my job? My heart pounded in my ears. Your job doesn't involve rewriting logs at midnight using admin credentials. Her eyes flickered, so she knew I knew. Silence stretched, electric, deadly. Then she leaned closer, just enough for me to see the calculation in her eyes. You're in way over your head, she whispered. Before I could answer, the server room beeped. Access granted. The door clicked open. Marin stepped inside, and as she disappeared into the dark room, she said over her shoulder, "Let's see who the system remembers tomorrow morning." The door closed, locked behind her. My breath caught, because I suddenly realized, if she wiped the logs tonight, I wouldn't be fighting to clear my name anymore. I'd be fighting to keep my entire career alive. Everything was about to collapse, unless I moved now. For a full 10 seconds, I stood frozen outside the locked server room door. Inside, I could hear faint typing. Fast. Aggressive. Like someone racing a countdown clock. She was rewriting logs, erasing timestamps, rebuilding a digital reality where I was the villain. And if she finished, there would be no coming back. I forced myself to breathe, to steady the shaking in my hands. My first instinct was to bang on the door, demand she stop, drag her out. But that would only make her stronger. She'd twist it into emotional instability, unprofessionalism, Talise interfering with IT systems. She wanted me to panic. I wasn't going to give her that. Instead, I lifted my phone and opened the voice recorder. If she walked out with a confession, or even a hint of one, I'd have it. Then I texted Owen. She's in the server room, overwriting logs. What do I do? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. My heart hammered against my ribs. Finally, the message came. Don't go in. She'll spin it. Stall her. I'm coming. I swallowed hard and stepped closer to the door. Marin, I said, loud enough for the recorder to catch my voice. What exactly are you doing in there? The typing paused, then resumed. She didn't answer. The building empties. The hallway around me felt cavernous, like a tunnel designed to amplify dread. Every hum of the overhead lights buzzed in my teeth. Somewhere down the corridor, an elevator dinged. The last employees were leaving. Soon, it would just be me and her. No witnesses. I watched the door, willing Owen to hurry, willing Marin to slip up, willing the universe to give me one tiny crack of advantage. Instead, the hallway went silent. Then the typing inside the server room stopped. The door beeped. Unlocked. I stepped back instinctively as it swung open. Marin stood there, her face perfectly smooth, but her eyes too bright, like someone who'd just outrun a wildfire and knew she'd gotten away with something. Talise, she said softly. Still here? I kept my phone angled toward her without being obvious. Working, she smirked. Working or spying? I didn't rise to it. I held my ground. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Whatever you think you're chasing, it won't help you. Her breath smelled faintly of citrus tea and mint lip balm, a detail so small, so mundane, but it somehow made her feel more dangerous, because her calm meant she believed she had already won. I forced my voice level. I know what you're doing. She leaned in, whispering, You have no idea. Then she walked past me, heel clicks fading down the hall. 10 seconds later, Owen sprinted around the corner, breathless. She finished? He gasped. I nodded, throat tight. He swore under his breath, shoved his glasses up, and darted into the server room. Inside, he flew across the keyboard, pulling up system logs, running unknown commands, scanning for traces I couldn't follow. After a minute, he froze. Talise, he whispered, voice hollow. She wiped the Delta history. My stomach dropped. Meaning? Meaning the system thinks the edits were yours, not hers. I felt the floor tilt under me. Owen kept typing, frantic. I can recover some things. Maybe. But this isn't normal sabotage. She planned this. She rehearsed this. She knew exactly what to delete. My chest constricted. So what now? Owen swallowed hard. Now, you need a stronger weapon. The weapon takes shape. For 2 days, I barely spoke to anyone. Not out of fear, out of focus. There was only one strategy left. If she was rewriting the past, I had to expose the present. Not by accusing, not by arguing, not by sounding paranoid, but by revealing the truth so cleanly, so undeniably, so publicly that even her rewrites couldn't mask it. The perfect stage was the Biotech Education Summit, happening in less than a week. Hundreds of educators, donors, board members, and journalists would attend. Marin insisted on co-presenting. She wanted center stage. She wanted to control the story. Fine. Let her stand next to me. Let her be in the spotlight. Let everyone see her face when her lies unraveled. I began assembling my counter-presentation. Not dramatic, not emotional, just facts. Building entry logs, system access trails, macro-level inconsistencies, the untouched real spreadsheet. Owen's partial recovery logs, a video clip from Lena showing the timestamp discrepancy, a recorded pattern of off-hour data rewrites. I crafted a story that no one could interpret as personal vengeance. It was scientific, it was technical, it was airtight. All I had to do was present it. All I had to do was survive long enough to reach the stage. The Stranger in the Shadows. On Thursday night, exactly 4 days before the summit, I stepped out of Genbridge around 9 p.m. The Mission District air was sharp, thick with the smell of street tacos and car exhaust. I reached the corner before I realized. Someone was following me. A dark silhouette stayed a consistent 20 steps back. Not close enough to see their face. Not far enough to be coincidence. I quickened my pace. So did they. My breath stuttered. I turned a corner sharply. The figure turned too. My heart slammed against my ribs. For a split second, I considered doubling back to the office. But no. The building was nearly empty. If Marin had sent someone, I needed people around me. Witnesses. I headed toward Valencia Street, where the nightlife hummed. But halfway there, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. The same one from before. Careful, Talise. You're making dangerous choices. My hands tingled with adrenaline. Another message. You won't like the consequences. My legs moved faster on instinct. But then, a third message appeared. This one froze me cold. The summit will be your last mistake. I stopped walking entirely. Cars passed. Music thumped from a bar nearby. People laughed. The world kept spinning while my lungs struggled for air. This wasn't just sabotage anymore. This was a warning, a threat, a promise. Someone didn't want me alive on that stage. The breaking point before the storm. I reached my apartment and locked the door behind me. The second the deadbolt clicked, my knees nearly buckled. My hands shook as I dialed Owen. He picked up on the second ring. Talise. I could barely breathe. Someone followed me. What? His voice sharpened. Are you safe? Yes, I think so. Do you know who it was? Did you see? No, but I got messages. Threats. Owen swore under his breath. You need to tell Jonah. No, I said immediately. Why not? Because without proof it'll sound paranoid, and that's exactly what Marin wants. Owen fell silent. Then, so what will you do? I looked at my laptop, at the presentation slides, at the evidence, at everything she tried to bury. I'll go to the summit, I said, and I'll show the truth. Talise, I'm done hiding. A beat. Then Owen said the quietest words of the night. Then be prepared, because if Marin feels cornered, she won't stay subtle anymore. I knew he was right. I just didn't know how soon I'd learn it. The next morning, I woke up with the distinct feeling that someone had rearranged the air in my apartment while I slept. Nothing looked different. Nothing was moved. But something felt off, an invisible shift, like static before lightning. I sat up slowly, listening. Silence. Yet the unease clung to me like cold humidity. I moved quietly through the apartment, checking the door locks, windows, and blinds. Everything was normal. But I wasn't, because for the first time, the sabotage no longer felt digital. It felt physical. Close. Breathing down my neck. The summit was 3 days away. 3 days until everything erupted. And someone wanted to make sure I didn't make it there. A tense morning at Genbridge. When I arrived at the office, the energy felt strangely suspended. Like everyone subconsciously sensed a storm building between me and Marin, but didn't know what weather pattern to assign to it. Marin was already at her desk. She looked polished. Too polished. Hair perfect, blazer crisp, movements smooth and rehearsed. The moment she saw me, her expression tightened. Barely. But enough that I caught it. Fear. Not of me. Of what I might reveal. Good. Let her sweat. Morning, she said, voice sugary. Ready for our summit prep meeting? I've been ready, I said calmly. Her jaw twitched. We walked to the conference room together. An accidental metaphor for a partnership that didn't exist. Inside, Jonah was arranging folders. He smiled stiffly. Great. Let's run through the first draft of your joint presentation. I sat. Marin sat opposite me. Jonah dimmed the lights and clicked the projector on. The title slide appeared. Genbridge, A Year of Educational Impact and Program Growth. Presented by Marin Vale and Talise Camden. Marin cleared her throat. For the data section, I'll present the final metrics since the board is already familiar with my reporting structure. My reporting structure. My jaw clenched. Jonah nodded. As long as it's accurate. I shot him a quick glance. Did he mean that pointedly? Or was it coincidence? Marin clicked to the next slide, revealing the new statistics. My stomach twisted. These were the doctored numbers she had created to replace the originals. I kept my expression neutral. She kept her smile sharp. And then Talise, she continued, will talk about the narrative takeaways from the data and the student stories. More of the human interest angle. So that was her plan. Give me the soft, emotional sections. Keep the technical sections for herself. Position me as the sentimental storyteller, not the data expert. A subtle character assassination disguised as delegation. I took a slow breath. Actually, I said, I'd like to present the data segment. Marin blinked. You? Yes. She laughed lightly as if I had made a joke. Talise, the board saw your inconsistencies. It's better if… Jonah cut in. Talise can present if she wants. She has seniority on the program data. Marin's smile cracked for a microsecond. Then she recovered. Of course, if that's what Jonah prefers. But her eyes shot daggers at me. Perfect. Owen's emergency message. I returned to my desk feeling the tension like static in the air. 5 minutes later, my laptop pinged. A message from Owen. Do not open shared drive. Something's wrong. Come to the lab now. My pulse spiked. I grabbed my notebook and headed toward the lab, trying not to look suspicious. Students were working on biotech kits, pipetting fluorescent dyes under Lena's supervision. Owen waited near the back, pale and sweating. What happened? I whispered. He pointed to his screen. Look. The shared drive, where departments uploaded files for summit presentations, had a new folder. Camden Evidence Review. My stomach clenched so violently I had to grip the counter. Inside the folder were dozens of files, all labeled with variations of falsified, altered by TC, Camden tampering log, Camden fault. My hands trembled. She created these. Yes, Owen said. And she made them visible to Jonah and the board. It's a preemptive strike. She wants them to think you're the one making fake evidence. A rush of heat shot to my head so fast I had to steady myself. She's framing me for trying to prove she framed me. Owen nodded grimly. It's brilliant. Psychopathic. But brilliant. My breath shook. How did she even… She used Jonah's admin credentials again, he said. But worse. She linked a few of the files to your login by spoofing verification keys. If Jonah glances at this without digging deeper, it'll look like you created the false logs. My heart nearly stopped. She's trying to get me fired before the summit. Owen nodded. Or make sure if you do present anything, they won't believe a single word. I pressed a hand to my chest. Panic wanted to claw its way out, but panic was exactly what she wanted. I forced myself to breathe. She's accelerating, I said. She knows she's losing control. Yes, Owen whispered. Cornered animals get vicious. I looked him dead in the eyes. Then we make sure she's the one who gets cornered. The unexpected offer. That afternoon, as I tried to focus on my work, Lena approached my cubicle, hands in her lab coat pockets. You look like someone swallowed a grenade, she said. Feels accurate. She leaned in. If you need a second witness, someone who's seen her behavior, someone who saw her in the building that night, I'll speak up. My throat tightened. You'd do that. Lena nodded. I hate bullies more than I hate paperwork. I almost laughed. Almost. She added quietly. Just make sure whatever you reveal at the summit doesn't blow back on the students. They don't deserve fallout. I nodded. They won't be touched. I swear. Good, she said, stepping back. Then finish this. That night, the line gets crossed. I stayed late again, compiling everything into a master timeline. System access logs, building entries, file edits, timestamps, shadow copies, metadata breadcrumbs. At 10:47 p.m. my apartment buzzer rang. I froze. No one visits me unannounced. No one should even know I'm home right now. Slowly, I approached the intercom. Hello? My voice trembled. Silence. Then, a voice I recognized instantly, low and cold. Talise, open the door. Marin. My blood iced. She was here, at my home. My fingers hovered over the intercom button. I didn't press it. She knocked once, sharp, impatient. I know you're in there, she said. We need to talk. Talk? No. We were far past talking. I stepped back from the door, heart slamming in my ribcage. Another knock, harder this time. Talise, she said softly. Too softly, too calm. I just want to clarify a few things before the summit. Clarity wasn't what she wanted. Control was. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just sabotaging my data. She was studying me. She was watching me. She was escalating. And she was not going to stop. Not unless I stopped her first. I backed away from the door, whispering to myself, "Don't open it. Don't open it." Then she said through the wood, "Talise, if you think you can beat me, you really don't understand the rules of this game." A chill crawled up my spine. Because she was right about one thing. This was a game, but she had no idea I'd already changed the rules. I didn't sleep. Not after Marin showed up at my door. Not after her voice slid through the intercom like a knife dipped in honey. Not after she whispered that chilling line, "You don't understand the rules of this game." Even after she left, after I heard her heels click down the hallway, after the elevator dinged and disappeared, the apartment still felt occupied, like her presence hadn't walked away, like it had soaked into the walls. I ended up sitting on the floor of my bedroom, back against the nightstand, phone clutched tightly in my hand. Every sound outside made me flinch. Every passing car looked like a threat. The shadows on the ceiling felt too aware. When dawn finally broke, it felt less like a sunrise and more like a reprieve. But a short one. Back at Jen Bridge, whispers and watchers. I stepped into the office the next morning with a caffeine headache and nerves wired so tight they buzzed beneath my skin. People stared. Not overtly, not with gaping mouths or pointing fingers, but subtly. Lingering glances, quiet observations, conversations stopping mid-sentence. Something had shifted. Again. I got my answer when I reached my desk. A printed memo sat on my keyboard. Internal notice. Due to recent concerns about data handling integrity and unauthorized access attempts, all staff are reminded to adhere to cybersecurity policies. Additional review procedures will be implemented for upcoming grant presentations. I felt physically nauseous. Marin's preemptive fake files, her late-night log rewrites, her staged evidence. It was working. She was poisoning the atmosphere before I could show the truth. And the worst part? Jonah had initialed the memo. I swallowed hard. That meant he approved it. That meant he was worried. That meant the shadow of doubt had already been cast. On me. My inbox pinged. Email from Jonah. Talise, please meet with me at 2 p.m. regarding the summit presentation. We need to clarify a few concerns. Clarify. That corporate, polite way of saying, prove you're not the problem. The meeting before the meeting. I found Owen in the lab, hunched over 2 monitors, eyes bloodshot. She came to your apartment? He said, horrified. Yes, she's unhinged. She's desperate, I corrected. But the fear was real. The confrontation was real. The danger was real. Owen rubbed his face. You need to tell Jonah about last night. I don't have proof she was there. It'll sound unhinged. Exactly how she wants me to look. He slumped. Then what's the plan? Because she's burying you in paper trails and poisoning the office. I took a breath. A 2-front strategy. He blinked. Meaning? 1, I finished the summit presentation as planned. And 2, I looked him dead in the eyes. I let Marin think she's successfully cornering me, right up until the moment she can't escape the truth anymore. A slow, stunned smile broke across his face. You're terrifying. I'm tired, I said. That's worse. 2 p.m., Jonah's office. The air inside Jonah's office felt thick enough to chew. He gestured for me to sit. His eyes were tired. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago, like this conflict was carving lines into his face. Talise, he began carefully, you've always been one of our most reliable coordinators. Thank you. But, he continued, there are concerns I need clarity on. There it was, the quiet blade. I kept my voice steady. About the data? Yes, he said. About access patterns, file inconsistencies, activity logs showing unusual edits from your account. My stomach churned. He wasn't accusing me, not directly, but he was giving me a chance to explain. I didn't make those edits, I said slowly. But someone wants you to think I did. Jonah's brow furrowed. Are you suggesting tampering? I took a breath. A careful one. I'm suggesting we need to look at the bigger picture, access logs, security footage, paper backups, hidden metadata. His eyes narrowed slightly. Talise, are you accusing Marin of something? There it was. The dangerous question. If I said yes without presenting proof, I would play directly into Marin's narrative. So instead I said, I'm asking for a fair chance to show the truth. At the summit. Jonah leaned back, studied me. After a long moment, he said, You'll have it. But if you deviate from the approved presentation, even once, I'll have to intervene. Meaning, if I made a scene, I'd be shut down. If I accused her prematurely, I'd lose everything. I understand, I said quietly. He nodded, relieved. Then let's move forward. But as I left his office, my hands trembled with adrenaline. Moving forward meant walking directly into Marin's trap. Unless I reversed it. The last file, the one she missed. Later that evening, Owen rushed into my cubicle like he'd sprinted across the building. I found something, he whispered. Something big. I stood so fast my chair rolled back. What? He pulled up a screen full of lines of code, metadata logs, backup pings, shadow layer file traces. The system mirrors files every 48 hours into an off-site backup, he explained. It's rarely accessed. Almost nobody knows it exists. And Marin didn't rewrite these logs. She didn't know about them. My heart kicked in my chest. Show me. He clicked a sequence of commands, and suddenly, there it was. A pristine, untouched copy of the original student metrics file, complete with timestamps showing the real numbers, and then the exact moment Marin replaced them. The screen displayed, file altered. 11:42 p.m. User, Vale, Marin. IP, Bayview District Remote ID. Evidence, absolute undeniable evidence. Owen exhaled shakily. She can't erase this. Not without access she doesn't have. My knees nearly gave out. Owen, I whispered. This is it. He nodded, eyes wide. You have the smoking gun. I pressed a hand over my mouth, overwhelmed. I can win, I whispered. Talise, Owen said, grabbing my arm. You cannot let her know you found this. Not yet. If she even suspects you have something this big. I know, I said. And I did know. Because the moment Marin realized her entire plan was about to collapse, she would stop being subtle. She would go for the throat. The most dangerous message yet. That night, I took a different route home, avoided dark streets, kept my phone in my hand, checked over my shoulder every few steps. By the time I reached my building, I was mentally exhausted. Inside my apartment, I locked the door. Top lock, bottom lock, chain latch. Then my phone buzzed. A text from the same unknown number. Funny thing about evidence. I froze. Another message. It disappears so easily. My heartbeat slammed in my ears. One more message came. Sleep well, Talise. You'll need the rest. My breath caught. My hands trembled. Because suddenly everything clicked. Marin didn't know what I had. But she knew I had something. And she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The night after the anonymous threat, I slept with the lights on. Not that I really slept. More like drifted in and out of shallow, jittery awareness. Every creak of the building, every rumble of the street below, every vibration from my refrigerator made my heart jump. This wasn't a data dispute anymore. It wasn't office politics. It wasn't even just sabotage. Something darker was creeping in. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. And for the first time, I wondered, would Marin really risk everything just to destroy me? The answer was becoming clear. Yes. Yes, she absolutely would. The summit eve begins. The next morning, San Francisco's fog was so thick it felt like walking through wet cotton. I wrapped my sweater tighter and headed toward the office, replaying Owen's discovery in my mind. The off-site backup. The one file Marin couldn't corrupt. The one log she didn't know existed. The evidence was so solid it could break concrete. I just had to make it to the summit alive and coherent enough to use it. At Genbridge, the lobby buzzed with nervous energy. Posters and equipment cases were stacked by the elevators. Staff members rushed around with lanyards and folders in hand. The summit was tomorrow, and everyone was high-strung. Everyone except Marin. She stood near the front desk, talking to a board member with a polished smile that could cut glass. The moment she spotted me, her expression didn't change. But I caught the flicker in her eyes. Calculation, suspicion, a glint of fear? Good. Let it grow. The confrontation that almost happened. As I made my way toward the lab, Marin intercepted me. "Talise," she said, her tone light. "A quick question." I didn't stop. "Make it fast." She fell into step beside me, her heels clicking like metronome ticks of doom. "Are you planning anything unexpected at the summit?" Her voice was innocent, but her eyes were searching, digging, hunting. I kept walking. "Define unexpected." She smiled just a hair too wide. "Anything that could undermine the team." By undermine the team, she meant expose her. I stopped walking. She stopped too. The hallway was empty, quiet, dangerous. I met her gaze head-on. "If anyone gets undermined tomorrow, it won't be me." There. A flash. Her mask slipped. Something sharp and dangerous flickered behind her eyes. Just for a second. Something feral. Then the mask came back. "Well," she said brightly, "let's hope everything goes smoothly." And she walked away. As she turned the corner, I felt my pulse pounding in my throat. She was scared. But scared people don't give up. They strike harder. Owen's secret preparation. In the lab, Owen was hunched over a workstation with 3 monitors lit up in front of him. Lines of code flashed across each screen. He didn't look up as he spoke. "We need redundancy." "We already have redundancy," I said. "The off-site backup." "Not enough," he muttered. "If she figures out where the logs came from, she'll panic. And panicking people get unpredictable. We need copies." "How many?" He pointed at the screens. "I'm creating 3 encrypted versions, one on a hardware token, one on a read-only USB, and one hidden in the conference presentation itself." I blinked. "Inside the presentation?" "Think of it like metadata nesting," he said. "A file hidden behind a file." A twisted grin crept onto my face. "And she won't see it coming." Owen finally looked up. "Talise, you need to be careful tomorrow. Stick to your script. Stick to the facts. Don't let her rattle you." I nodded, but my stomach ached with nerves. Because rattling was exactly what Marin was good at. The unexpected visitor. Around 3 p.m., I was reviewing my slide deck when Lena appeared in my cubicle. She held 2 coffees, handing me one without a word. I took it gratefully. "You didn't have to—" "I did," she cut in. Lena wasn't emotional by nature, so when she looked at me, really looked at me, my throat tightened. "You good?" she asked. No sugarcoating, no small talk, just a direct question. "I will be," I said. Her jaw flexed. "That woman is a rattlesnake. Don't get close enough to let her bite." I almost laughed at the bluntness. Almost. Then she leaned in, voice low. "And Talise, if anything feels off tomorrow, anything at all, call me. I'll be there." Emotion pricked behind my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. She nodded once, then walked away. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something unfamiliar. Support. Real support. The phone call that changed everything. By evening, I finally left the office. I had barely eaten, my head throbbed, and my nerves felt like electric wires about to snap. I was halfway home when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. I nearly ignored it, until the message popped up. "Stop digging." I froze. Cars honked behind me, people brushed past, but my feet were glued to the sidewalk. Another message appeared. You think you're safe because of tomorrow? Then, you're not. I swallowed hard, pulse racing. The next message hit like a physical blow. Accidents happen. And finally, night, Talise. My hands shook violently. This wasn't Marin's usual style. Calculated manipulation, psychological traps, careful positioning. This was threatening. Messy. Barely restrained. Either she was losing control, or someone else was helping her. Either possibility was terrifying. I hurried home, double-checked every lock, and sat on the living room floor trying to breathe. The off-site evidence was secure. The encrypted copies were safe. Owen was ready. Lena was ready. But was I ready? I wasn't sure. Because tomorrow wasn't just a presentation. It was war. The final slide. Late that night, I opened my laptop and reviewed my presentation one last time. The data, the timestamps, the backup logs, the trail of truth. Then I reached the final slide. It was simple. A single sentence. Integrity is what remains when the truth is tested. As I stared at it, a strange calm washed over me. Yes, I was afraid. Yes, Marin was dangerous. Yes, tomorrow could ruin everything. But tomorrow could also fix everything. All I had to do was walk onto that stage. All I had to do was show the truth. All I had to do was survive long enough to speak. I closed my laptop, took a slow breath, and whispered into the quiet room. Tomorrow, I end this. But as I turned off the light and crawled into bed, a thought flickered through my mind. What if Marin had one more move left? What if she wasn't done yet? What if tonight she wasn't alone? The morning of the Biotech Education Summit arrived shrouded in fog so heavy it felt like the entire city was holding its breath. I barely tasted my coffee. My hands trembled as I buttoned my blazer. Every movement felt mechanical, like I wasn't getting dressed, but armoring up. Today wasn't a presentation. It wasn't professional. It wasn't symbolic. Today was survival. I checked my evidence drives one last time. Hardware token, read-only USB, encrypted metadata copy inside the slides, cloud backup on a private server, email draft ready to blast to the board if things went wrong. Everything was in place. Everything except my heartbeat, which was hammering like it wanted out of my ribcage. Arrival at the convention center. Moscone West was already buzzing by the time I arrived. White banners hung from the ceiling, reading, Biotech Education Summit 2025, Building the Future. People in suits and polished shoes rushed past me, badges swinging from lanyards. The air smelled like coffee, new carpet, and nerves. I spotted GenBridge staff setting up posters at booth 14. Owen was adjusting a monitor, his hair sticking up like he'd fought a wind tunnel. When he saw me, he exhaled in relief. You made it. Barely. Any more messages? He asked. I shook my head. Nothing since last night. But that didn't ease the dread coiled in my stomach. He wound the cable tightly and looked around. Marin's here. My pulse spiked. Where? He nodded toward the registration desk. She stood there, radiant in a pale blue blazer, chatting with a board member, laughing, glowing, painting herself as the picture of professionalism. When her eyes landed on me, her smile didn't falter. But something sharpened underneath it, like she had already planned her next move. A strange warning. As Owen and I approached the stage prep area, a volunteer tapped my shoulder. You're Talise Camden, right? Yes. She handed me a folded note. Someone left this for you. Said it was urgent. My blood chilled. I unfolded it, expecting another threat, but the handwriting was messy, rushed. Do not trust the panel moderator. He's meeting with her. My heart thudded. The moderator? The one who controlled speaking order? The one who had the power to cut mics? I crumpled the note instinctively and shoved it into my pocket. Owen's brows knitted. What is it? Nothing, I said quickly. Just pre-summit stress. I couldn't drag him into that paranoia. Not yet. The backstage briefing. At 11:30 a.m., all presenters were ushered into the green room behind the main stage. The space was buzzing with staff, wires, screens, and tech crews making last-minute adjustments. I could hear the muffled sound of the keynote speaker through the walls. Smooth, confident, practiced. Soon that would be me. And Marin, standing side by side, breathing the same air, pretending to be allies. Marin approached me with slow, deliberate steps. Her heels clicked like small detonations. "Big day," she murmured. I didn't respond. "You look tense," she added with fake concern. "I hope you brought the correct files. The board hates surprises." "I brought the truth," I said. Her smile twitched, unnerved for half a second before she recovered. "Let's hope your version of the truth aligns with reality." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "Oh, it will." She blinked. Just once. A crack in the facade. Then she walked away. But not before I noticed something chilling. Her hands were shaking. The moderators move. At noon, the panelists gathered near the stage entrance. The moderator, a tall man named Dr. Halden, held a clipboard and wore an expression that was just too blank, too rehearsed, too aware. When he reached me, he placed a firm hand on my arm. "Ms. Camden," he said, "there have been updates to the speaking order." My stomach dropped. "What kind of updates?" "You'll present the program overview," he said. "Marin will handle the data. You will conclude on student outcomes." Exactly how Marin wanted it. Exactly how she could control the narrative. Exactly how she could prevent me from reaching the evidence slides. "No," I said. "That's not the plan we submitted." Dr. Halden's expression didn't change. "It's the plan now." Behind him, Marin watched from a distance. Her lips, or maybe it was my paranoia, curved into the faintest smile. Owen stepped closer. "This wasn't approved by Jonah." The moderator ignored him. "We're beginning in 10 minutes. Please be prepared." Then he walked away. I felt my throat tighten, panic clawing at the edges of my mind. He was going to cut my mic. He was going to skip my slides. He was going to steer the panel away from any truth-telling. This was coordinated. Carefully. Strategically. Ruthlessly. Owen touched my arm. "Talise, look at me." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "You're smarter than she is," he said quietly. "You're prepared. And you have the real evidence. So adapt." Adapt. Right. This wasn't a presentation anymore. This was a chess match. And Marin had just moved her queen. The chair without a name. At 12:15 p.m., we were escorted onto the stage. Applause, camera flashes, spotlights blinding my eyes. The stage was set with 2 chairs and a podium. But something wasn't right. On the screen behind us, the title slide no longer had both our names. Just one. Presented by Marin Vale. A ripple of confusion swept through the audience. My chest tightened. Owen, sitting in the front row, jolted upright. Marin glanced at me with the sweetest expression I had ever seen on a monster. "Oh," she whispered. "Didn't Jonah tell you? The board asked me to lead. They're not confident in your materials." Lie, another lie, a final pre-strike. I could feel the audience's eyes on us. I could feel the tension. I could feel the floor drop out from under me. The moderator stepped up to the podium. "Welcome. Today's session will focus on Genbridge's Revolutionary Year of Progress, presented by coordinator Marin Vale." The applause was polite. My pulse roared in my ears. Marin took the microphone. "Thank you, Dr. Halden. And thank you all for being here. Today, I'll be presenting our program metrics for the year." She tapped the clicker. The first slide appeared. Corrupted, altered, fabricated. Her numbers, her lies, her masterpiece. I felt the panic rising like a tide. She had stolen the stage, stolen my work, stolen my voice. And if I didn't act now, she would steal my entire career. I reached into my blazer pocket, closed my fingers around the hardware token, and whispered under my breath, "Not today." Then I stood up. Marin's eyes widened. The moderator tensed. The audience murmured. Everything slowed. Glass-like, fragile, ready to shatter. I stepped toward the podium, and the house lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out entirely. Darkness swallowed the room. Men and women gasped. Phones lit up. The projector cut off. And in the pitch-black silence, a voice I knew too well whispered behind me, "Sit down, Talise. This isn't your moment. My blood froze. It wasn't Marin. It was a man's voice. And he was right behind me. Close. Too close. For a heartbeat, the blackout felt like the world itself had collapsed. No lights, no screen, no sound except gasps, shuffling feet, and the rising murmur of hundreds of confused attendees. But all of that blurred under one paralyzing reality. A man stood directly behind me, close enough to feel the heat of his breath on my neck. And he whispered, "Sit down, Talise. This isn't your moment." My entire body locked. That voice wasn't familiar. Not from the office, not from any meeting, not from any committee member or partner. Deep, calm, controlled. Whoever he wasn't improvising. This was planned, and he was here because of Marin. My pulse hammered so loud it was all I could hear. I turned just slightly, enough to glimpse a silhouette in the faint glow of emergency lights that had begun to flicker along the floor. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a Summit staff badge. But the badge wasn't real. Not with those edges. He wasn't staff. He wasn't security. He was someone Marin sent to stop me. And if he was here, that meant she knew I was about to expose her. He leaned closer. "Just walk back to your seat," he murmured, quietly. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. "If I don't?" His answer was soft, terrifyingly casual. "Accidents happen." The same words from the text messages. This was him, the man behind the threats. The ghost in the messages had a face now, even if I couldn't see it clearly, and he was inches away. The lights return, and the lie begins. The overhead lights flickered back to life, bathing the stage in an artificial glow. The audience exhaled in relief, but I stayed frozen. The man had already blended into the shadows backstage, disappearing so fast it made me doubt he'd ever stood there at all. Marin, who had clearly expected the moment, pasted on a look of performative confusion. "Oh goodness, technical issues," she chimed sweetly into the mic. "We'll resume in just a moment." Her voice was shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. This blackout was planned. Her plan. Her trap. The moderator adjusted his tie awkwardly. "Apologies for the interruption, folks." I scanned the room for Owen. He was halfway out of his seat, eyes locked on me, his expression a mix of alarm and, "Do not do anything reckless." I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe. "Okay, fine. If she wanted chaos, I could use chaos." The first shift in power. Marin lifted the clicker again. "As I was saying before I have a correction to make." The words left my mouth before I fully registered them. The room stilled. The moderator stiffened. Marin's head snapped toward me so fast her hair whipped across her shoulder. "What?" she said too quickly. I stepped toward the podium. "My name was removed from the presentation," I said calmly. "I'd like to know why." A ripple of whispers moved through the audience. Marin forced a laugh. "This is not the time." "No," I said firmly. "This is exactly the time." The moderator cleared his throat. "Ms. Camden, perhaps you and Ms. Vale should—" "I am one of the coordinators responsible for this program," I said, projecting my voice clearly, steadily. "And I deserve to be represented accurately." Murmurs intensified. Someone in the audience raised a phone, recording. "Good. Let them record." Marin's panic flickered across her face before she smoothed it away. "We updated the slide for clarity." "Then why didn't Jonah tell me?" I asked. She hesitated, long enough to betray herself. The moderator stepped closer to the mic. "Ms. Camden, if you'd prefer to save internal matters for after the panel." I pulled the hardware token from my pocket and held it up. Marin's breath caught audibly. The moderator froze. Owen stood up from his chair, eyes wide. And Marin whispered, like a threat slithering through her teeth, "Sit down." The collapse of her control. "I'm not sitting down," I said. Time seemed to stretch. I walked straight toward the podium. Marin darted in front of me, trying to block it, her hands trembling so violently she could barely keep them still. "Talise, don't!" she hissed. The moderator reached out as if to physically stop me, but someone else moved faster. "Lena." She stood from her seat in the second row and raised her voice. Calm, steady, unmistakably authoritative. "Let her speak." Silence. Even Marin flinched. Lena continued, "If Genbridge represents honesty and integrity, then everyone deserves to hear both coordinators." The audience buzzed with agreement. The moderator sagged slightly, unable to argue with public sentiment. He stepped aside. Marin's face drained of color. In that instant, she realized she'd lost control of the room. And losing control for someone like her was worse than losing the job. But then, another twist. I stepped up to the podium, my hand sliding the hardware token toward the laptop. But before I could insert it, the projector screen glitched again, then went black. A message flashed. "System error, source files corrupted." My stomach dropped. Someone was still tampering. I scanned the stage and saw him. The man from the blackout, standing near a tech cart, pretending to check cables. His hand hovered near the AV control tablet. Owen shot to his feet and shouted, "Hey, step away from that!" The man turned, bolted. The audience gasped as he sprinted toward a side exit. Security reacted too slowly. Marin gasped, too dramatically. Owen lunged down the aisle. The moderator froze, stunned. Lena cursed under her breath and started moving as well. Chaos exploded around me. And I did the only thing I could do. I forced the hardware token into the laptop port. The system beeped. Then, "File loaded, backup access granted." A gasp rippled through the first few rows. Marin's face twisted into something raw and horrifying. Fear. Real fear. I lifted my voice into the microphone. "Key everyone, please remain calm. I have the original, unaltered files." And then I clicked. The first evidence slide lit up the screen, and the entire room inhaled sharply. The moment everything breaks. Red highlighted timestamps, side-by-side comparisons, access logs with Marin's device ID, footage stills showing her entering Genbridge late at night. The truth. Undeniable. Damning. Brilliant. Marin staggered backward as if physically struck. No, this is fake. She manipulated," she screamed. But the crowd wasn't buying it. Phones were recording, people were whispering, board members stood up, faces pale. And I stepped to the side of the podium, voice steady. "Integrity isn't about avoiding mistakes," I said. "It's about facing the truth. This is the truth." Marin trembled. Then her voice cracked. "You have no idea what you've just done." Her words were shaking, wild, edged with something that terrified me more than all the sabotage combined. Because Marin wasn't just exposed. She was unraveling, breaking, cornered. And cornered people are dangerous. Before anyone could move, she lunged. Straight at me, hands outstretched. Voice raw, eyes wild. And the room exploded into screams. Marin lunged at me with a sound that didn't belong in a professional setting. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a shout. It was a raw, primal noise, something between desperation and fury, like her entire world had snapped, and I was the only thing left she could claw at. Her hands reached for my throat. I barely had time to react. Lena moved first. "Hey!" she yelled, vaulting up the steps toward the stage. Right behind her, Owen jumped onto the platform from the side stairs. The moderator yelled into the mic for security. The audience stood up in a wave of shock and chaos. And I stumbled backward, catching myself against the podium as Marin's fingers scraped the air inches from my face. Her eyes were wild, almost unrecognizable. Terror, rage, collapse. "You ruined me!" she screamed, her voice cracking. You had nothing. You're nothing!" Her foot slipped. Her momentum carried her forward. She slammed into the podium instead of me. The mic screeched with feedback. The laptop nearly toppled off. 2 security guards grabbed her arms. She shrieked and kicked, hair whipping, blazer ripped at the shoulder. "Let go! She lied! She faked it! She faked all of it!" "Ms. Vale, please stop resisting," one guard said. No, you don't understand. She's a fraud. She... But the more she screamed, the more the audience recoiled. The more the board frowned. The more her mask shattered. The more the truth became undeniable. This wasn't the behavior of an innocent woman. This was the behavior of someone whose entire house of cards had just collapsed. The guards pulled her back, struggling to restrain her. Marin kept fighting, thrashing like a cornered animal. Her voice cracked into a hoarse sob. "You don't know what I had to do. You don't understand. You don't—" Then she saw me, really saw me. Her words dropped to a whisper, strangled and furious. "You should have stayed quiet." And then security dragged her off stage. Silence after the storm. The room was still shaking with echoes of the chaos. People murmured. Phones kept recording. Board members whispered among themselves. I stood frozen beside the podium, chest heaving, adrenaline still flooding my veins. The moderator cleared his throat, voice trembling. Let's... Please remain calm while security handles the situation." Owen reached me first. "Talise," he breathed, gripping my shoulders. "Are you okay?" I nodded, barely. "I think so." Lena arrived next, checking my arms, my hands, my face. "She didn't scratch you, did she?" "No," I whispered. "She didn't touch me." Lena exhaled sharply. "Good, because if she had, I'd have knocked her teeth in." The comment made something inside me tremble. Something close to a laugh but too exhausted to escape. Behind us, the projector still displayed the comparison slide. Marin's edits beside the real data. Board members stood up, some angry, some stunned, some shaking their heads, but none of them doubting anymore, none of them questioning me. The truth was visible, recorded, unavoidable. Jonah's arrival. Minutes later, Jonah rushed onto the stage, breathless, eyes wide with panic. "Talise, oh my God, I saw the alerts. Are you hurt?" "No," I said softly. "I'm okay." He looked at the screen behind me, then back at me. His expression folded into something heavy and ashamed. "I should have asked more questions," he said quietly. "I should have looked closer. I should have trusted you." Emotion pricked behind my eyes. "You were trying to protect the organization," I said. "I understand. But I failed," he said, "and I'm so sorry." The sincerity hurt more than anger would have. Owen stepped closer. "Jonah, Marin accessed your admin credentials. She spoofed verification keys. She set Talise up." Jonah's face twisted in disbelief and anger. "How did she even—" "She planned this for months," I said. "And she would have gotten away with it if she hadn't missed the off-site backup." He shook his head slowly. "I can't believe this." But he did believe it, because the evidence was undeniable. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You saved this organization today," he said. "You saved our program, and you protected our students." My chest tightened. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen. The official statement. The panel was canceled. The audience dispersed. Security escorted Marin out of the building and into a private conference room until SFPD arrived. The board released a brief statement 2 hours later. "Pending investigation, Coordinator Marin Vale has been placed on immediate suspension for data manipulation, professional misconduct, and security breaches." My name was not mentioned as being under review. Not anymore. Instead, Coordinator Talise Camden will assume interim leadership of the Program Data Division. I stared at the announcement on my phone, emotions swirling so violently I couldn't pick one out. Relief, gratitude, exhaustion, vindication, grief for what I'd lost, hope for what I'd regained. I thought I would cry, but instead, I simply exhaled a breath I'd been holding for months. The conversation that closed a door. That evening, after the crowds dispersed and the adrenaline drained, I sat in a quiet corner of the convention center, sipping cold water and trying to ground myself. Owen sat across from me, elbows on his knees. "You did it," he said softly. "It doesn't feel like I did anything," I murmured. "It feels like I survived something." "That's still doing something." I glanced at him. "Thank you, for everything." He gave a shy half-smile. "I didn't do much." "You did enough." He looked away, embarrassed and relieved. Then Lena approached, hands in her jacket pockets, expression softer than usual. "You good?" she asked. "I will be." "You know she'll try to spin a narrative later," Lena said. "Claim mental stress, pressure, whatever. People like her always try to rewrite their own downfall." "I know," I said. "But the truth is out now." She nodded. And it's recorded from 40 different angles. That made me laugh. Finally, properly laugh. Lena smirked. Get some sleep, Camden. You look like a raccoon who's been stress writing grant applications for 48 hours. I basically have. She squeezed my shoulder and walked away. I watched her go, grateful beyond words. The final call. As I prepared to leave, my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. For a moment, fear spiked through me. But I answered anyway. A quiet voice spoke. Ms. Camden? Yes? This is Officer Trevino with the SFPD. I'm calling to inform you that Ms. Vale has been taken into custody. My breath hitched. For what charges? For unlawful system access, data tampering, misuse of restricted credentials, and harassment. We may reach out for a full statement tomorrow. Harassment. The texts. The man in the blackout. The threats. Pieces clicking into place like a lock turning. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. I'll cooperate. Thank you, ma'am. And for what it's worth, you handled today with remarkable composure. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the dark glass of the door. I didn't feel like someone who'd handled anything with composure, but I felt like someone who had chosen truth over fear and survived. The walk out. I stepped out into the cool night air of San Francisco. The fog had finally lifted, revealing a clear sky. A quiet sky. For the first time in months, the world didn't feel hostile. I walked slowly down the street, letting the events of the day settle in my bones. I'd been sabotaged, gaslit, threatened, stalked, almost attacked, nearly erased. But I was still here, still standing, still telling the truth, and still fighting for the students who deserved better. Everything Marin tried to take from me, my integrity, my credibility, my voice, I had reclaimed. Not by screaming, not by breaking, but by refusing to be silent. The final lesson. When I reached my apartment, I stood at the door for a long moment before unlocking it. Inside, it felt different, safer. I set my bag down gently, leaned against the wall, and closed my eyes. The final thought settled slowly, softly, like dust after a storm. Integrity isn't just who you are when things are easy. It's who you are when someone is trying to destroy you, and you refuse to let them. I opened my eyes, exhaled, and whispered to myself, I won. Not against Marin, but for myself, for my truth. For the future, I wasn't going to let anyone steal